Hey, Reliability Gang, I'm Jonathan Guiney.
And I'm Brendan Russ, and welcome to Reliability Radio, a JLL production, ReliabilityWeb.com media brand.
So, Brendan, this morning on the big stage, Mr. Terrence O'Hanlon himself talking about integration of strategy, not only reliability or asset management strategy, but really the organizational strategy.
Yeah, it was kind of the kickoff here for IMC25 down here at Marco Island. And it was really trying to showcase how a lot of different things were considered separate opportunities or separate initiatives. And as time has really come together, you can't think about reliability without having data there. And data becomes part of a reliability strategy. Well, now it's integrated. You can't do reliability without data. You can't focus on data without thinking about reliability.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, right? You know, making sure that the data that you're out there capturing today is fit for serve the organization strategy that you're trying to do, right? The mission that you're on, whatever your organizational objectives are.
Right. And that's kind of rolls and dovetails perfectly within general asset management. Within any organization, what are the goals of the company? How are you going to use and leverage your data and your reliability program through asset management to really be effective towards achieving your company's goals?
Yeah, a lot of people that we talk to, you know, maybe they think they have a plan, but they haven't thought about, I'm going to do all of this stuff and then I'm going to get a bunch of data, but I don't know what the data is going to tell me or do with it. Like, I feel like that's one of those things that you got to think about up front. You got to think about, all right, what am I trying to achieve? How is the data that I'm going to capture actually going to drive the needle in the right direction?
If they're even, when I say mature enough to realize that that's how that works, there's still some organizations that still treat reliability as its own little silo of what are the objectives reliability has.
No, crazy, isn't it?
It is kind of crazy.
So let's cut to our next guest, right? So Hetal Lee is with us today, and she wants to talk about integration of strategies.
Yeah, Hetal, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, pleasure to have you. How about you take a quick minute and tell us about yourself?
Sure. I'm Hetal Lee. I'm the workplace management lead for our technology vertical and division. So I work with clients within that domain. Most of the clients in that vertical are not first gen. They're second gen. They're expecting.
What's first gen mean?
First generation meaning that they've now gone outside of their own organization to provide services from a maintenance and a building and strategy projects move standpoint. And so they would work with a JLL, for example, to provide that service on their behalf. And so a lot of the technology clients that we work with have been doing this for quite some time. So they have an idea of how they feel their outcomes should be and how they should look like. And when we come into the play, there's always a low-hanging fruit, things that we can help them with right away. Where it gets challenging is that piece that you guys spoke about earlier in our conversation about true integration and understanding the importance of that baseline and data and how that impacts what you do year 2, 3, 4, and 5 if you're not setting yourself up on day one to get those outcomes met.
So what are some of the things that you're looking at from day one, from the start of a first generation outsourcing agreement? What are the things that you're recommending?
One of the biggest things is understanding what is within our privy. What assets are we in charge of? And not only from the standpoint of we're looking at X, Y, and Z, but how are those tied into the infrastructure and how are they impacting other parts of that business that's going to have an effect on how we as a service provider will provide programs, processes, improvements, optimization to the client. So if we don't understand what's there, how can we help them on their journey to gain efficiencies?
Yeah, so for our audience that's listening, right, when we talk about that outsourcing model, we are typically providing services to a client that does something. They make a widget, they put stuff into outer space, they put stuff on the World Wide Web, whatever it happens to be. There's still an integration between the facility management community, the services that we provide to that end user or client that works in that space, right? So we talk about the yellow line up to the last disconnect or a valve, a piece of pipe flange, a disconnect, whatever it happens to be.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly it. And thanks for that clarity. And I think it's important to understand where that line leads and to what responsibility you have, because it's not independent. That's when we talked about that word integration. It's all connected. It's a part of the overall infrastructure. And so it's important to understand when we look at an asset, when we look at reliability, it is part of how we actually deliver services and engineering, not in addition to or nice to have or something to look at future state. The day we go in, we should have reliability at top of mind.
So we're talking about now the integration between production and maintenance.
Correct.
So how often does JLL do that?
Well, our intent is that's how we go to market. That's our best in class practices where engineering/reliability is the same. It's no longer an added piece. It's just how we go to market. It's how we deliver services because we want to understand not only the assets that we have that we are managing, but also how those assets are going to impact other parts of the business, other parts of the services that JLL will have. So for example, we've got moves, right, that we're concerned about if a client is rotating, is moving around locations, how we manage those assets going to change with that? So it's not independent. You have to be able to integrate basic maintenance into an actual overall program that impacts other parts of the business. So we're taking engineering to the next level. We're making it a part of the business, not just how we operate.
So how does that usually get received when you go talk to your clients, right? So when you go and say, hey, this is kind of more integral to your central business, not just, well, we're here to take care of. Like, how does that go down? Not
smoothly, to be honest, because I think people see engineering, people see reliability as two separate things. It's just something we do. Oh, there's a cost. Oh, there's a process change, or there's something else that's different. What we in the industry really have to push for is showing that the importance of integration it's just how we do business. It's changing the mindset of people when they look at reliability as not an added feature, but how we do service, how we maintain equipment is with reliability. And that's going to take some time for the industry to get around that because quite frankly, when you look at a building and infrastructure, that is the last thing typically that gets a lot of attention because everything's working, people are comfortable. The second they're not, something's leaking, somebody's wet, someone's cold, someone's hot, then it becomes an issue. And it should never be that way. That's too reactive.
Particularly when you think you have an environment where that supports their entire business in general, right? The idea is that you're providing an environment for somebody else to do their work for their production. Does that extend beyond just simple, like something's leaking, something's dry, something's hot, something's cold? Does that go into, say, other parts of potentially the organization's goals, right? Like energy management or sustainability?
Absolutely. 100%. And that's kind of how we look at it, at least at the JLL lens, is that integration piece is vital and critical because it's not just for engineering. It goes into sustainability. It goes into looking at predictive, preventative maintenance. It looks into how we do project management, right? Is it a repair versus replacement decisions? All of those feed into it. And so you can't look at it separately, which is what I feel sometimes we all jump on. Do it this way. This is the most reliable way. But we have to take a step back to say, okay, if we do it this way, what is the downstream impact and the outcome that we can gain by looking at a reliability lens and not just maintenance?
And there's the piece that kind of ties back to what we talked about this morning with Terrence about using data.
That's right.
Using data to show how the reliability data-driven strategy impacts the overall organization. So is that part of that context when you're having those discussions, or is that something you have to build up to, right? Or is everybody at that same maturity level?
I think it depends on the client. Some have data, some have great data, some have incomplete data. But without that, we don't have a baseline. We can't start anywhere, and we can't give you insights. We can't make things better if we don't know where we are today. And so data is at the fundamental requirement to any type of engineering reliability program. And that is how we should be approaching our discussions with our clients.
Yeah, no, fantastic stuff. I think, that integration piece where you started talking about sustainability, we talk about things like process and quality, we talk about operational compliance, getting all those into one purview has been very powerful for us as an organization, right? Being able to integrate those different elements into an engineering delivery model so that they're all intertwined and interconnected and they're all helping to drive each other.
That's right. And you brought up a good point, Jonathan, on sustainability, because oftentimes we as an organization, and almost every organization has sustainability goals, right? You want to be carbon neutral by a certain date. You want to look at scope 1 and 2 as a part of getting to that commitment. And so remember that that's a big part of it. It's not independent. You should be looking at ways that if you have to meet that requirement in 2040, 2050, what can you do now? And what can you do looking at reliability as a lens to get there?
So you have to build a plan, right?
You have to build a
plan, figure out what your first steps are. Sometimes it's baby steps. Like you said, there's some low-hanging fruit. then you got to work with what you got, build towards the goals of what you want to try to get to accomplish all of that, right?
That's right.
You got to work with what you got, but you got to get better too, right? And I think that's
100%.
one of the things that we struggle with today around just taking that next step to get to that next level, because it's tough, right? And it's different, and people hate change. And I think, in current role, it's getting people on that journey. Not only did you get it past leadership, but now you got to win the hearts and minds of the people on the ground that are then taking you to that next level, delivering that data set that's going to help whatever your end client is, whether it's production or anybody else, to use that data that's going to actually do something better than what they had before.
So as we start to draw this session down to a close, Hetal, are there any last tidbits or do you want to leave for the audience?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we want to have is conversations, right? You guys talked about that quite a bit. It's wonderful to have a technical knowledge of the bits and pieces that we need, but if we are unable to share those in a meaningful way to stakeholders, we can't get them on our journey, right? And then that's when we start to have the lack of integration.
And really the lack of adoption, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that, Hetal.
Thanks, guys.
And for those of you listening, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Reliability Radio. We will catch you next time.